I would like to introduce a special speaker tonight, and that is Marajina Bhikkhuni, who is visiting us. At the moment, she's not in the room with me, but she's elsewhere in the temple having the little quarantine that we have for newly arrived visitors. If you're there and if you're able to unmute yourself, Marajina, I'd like to start with hearing some comments from you about this theme about what is the escape. And
Ayya, can you hear me?
yes, we can.
Okay, I don't know why the video isn't working, but hello everyone. The theme of the escape, well, nisarana is the Pali word for leaving behind and being freed from and escaping from samsara. So this escape is not in the sense of being crafty, like a mouse is finding an escape from an owl or a hawk chasing. It's the sort of escape that comes from thoroughly understanding what the gratification is, because there is gratification, and the heavens are filled with beings delighting and being gratified, and also thoroughly understanding the danger, because there is a danger, and the hells are filled with beings who have experienced that danger. So it's not a pushing away, and it's not an aversion for, which can happen if we try to surmount the conditions just by sheer will or force. More of an understanding where the clinging comes from, the clinging aggregate of feeling and the clinging aggregate of perception and the clinging aggregate of sankhara, which is intention. The aggregates themselves are not at issue. We need feeling, perception, and sankharas. We need form and consciousness, but they need to be fresh, anew, every moment. For instance, if you arrive at an intersection and you see a car coming, that perception of and that recognition of car and not crossing at that particular moment keeps one safe. But if we cling to any of that, if we cling to the car, we may forget we're at an intersection. We may start thinking of cars and colors and traffic and all sorts of things. Or when we come across a rope that we perceive as a snake, if we keep coming across that same rope and we stop recognizing it and we just automatically think rope, if it ever is a snake, if it ever is like a rattlesnake, and we continue to walk and we step on it, that's dangerous. So the aggregates themselves are not the issue, but clinging to them. And we find the escape from gratification and danger when we can move beyond that duality and with fresh aggregates at every moment. So that is the escape from gratification and danger.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you.
In one way, this teaching about the gratification, the danger, and the escape is going directly to the most profound levels of the Buddha's idea. And indeed, one of the suttas about this theme puts it in terms of the noble quest, the way that the Bodhisattva saw old age, sickness, and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, and was motivated and compelled out of his sincere, compassionate, and heroic effort to say there must be a way out of this. And then with that motivation, then he developed his investigation and developed his insight into the causation and dependent origination, which was just at the essence of his full enlightenment experience, was being able to see how the process works. And then with that full understanding of the process, then comes the possibility of seeing that process is not an essential, eternal, permanent thing, but that process can be let go and stripped away. Just remove the clinging, and then it comes apart. Even as Ayya Marajina mentioned about the gratification, danger, and escape in terms of the 5 aggregates of clinging, we may know that it can be a burden and a painful burden to deal with clinging to the body. We can be so disappointed and so on if we are cling to feelings. We become like almost like the victim of our feelings and are compelled to go rushing back and forth, going towards what we like and or what's pleasant, and running away from what's unpleasant. Even being, you could have a terrible life, and people can see at a kind of like an intermediate level if they can become detached by watching their own process in terms of the 5 aggregates, then they gain some bit of tranquility. But the Buddha was teaching about the 5 aggregates of clinging in terms of the fabrication of one's identity as a self, and the way that the round of rebirth is fueled and supported by that misconception about the self. And so then his invitation actually is to absolutely let go of any of those elements of the 5 aggregates as being aspect of the self. This is something that's those of us who are experienced Buddhists, we've been thinking and reflecting about these ideas for a long time, and we may have some direct realization about not clinging to those aspects, to those elements. But if you think back, or if you talk to people who never heard about it before, and you try to explain to them about the 5 aggregates or about non-self, a lot of people who don't know will be unable to understand what this teaching is aiming at, what it's about. Sometimes they even get angry if you try to speak to them about non-self, or if you try to tell them to let go of the body, let go of your feelings, let go of your mental formations. Let go of consciousness. Let go of perceptions. Your perceptions are not that important. Just let them go. It's just causing your suffering. Just let it go. And so people who've not fully realized the danger can definitely not understand what the point is about this teaching. It's interesting that while in some cases this teaching about the escape is really going to the ultimate, going to what Nibbana is, almost like an epithet of Nibbana, is the realization of this full freedom, the freedom from the afflictions of sensual desire, the affliction of the desire for a more continued existence or for some other existence, the affliction of ignorance. But then he also speaks about the escape, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, in terms of just a skillful technique of dealing with the different hindrances and afflictions that one may experience by directing awareness towards the opposites, and then finding out that one can step away from those afflictive, destructive, toxic, poisonous ways of thinking. One of my favorite Dhamma stories from my personal experience was about a student who suffered a lot because of addiction, and then subsequently got into recovery. But while they were in recovery, they were beset with resentment because this lady was sort of like a low bottom. She had lost everything. And a lot of the other people that she saw in the recovery programs didn't really lose very much. They still had their families and their house and their money and their job, and they just, were able to see their way to get into sobriety. And whereas this lady had really lost everything and been ruined before she saw the light. And so she had this resentment. And then when she got into the part of her recovery program about meditation and started going to Vipassana insight meditation groups and learning about meditation and studying the Dhamma, then something happened. And one day she was going into one of her recovery meetings filled with resentment. And the light dawned on her. And she just realized the resentment is optional. I can leave the resentment before I enter the front door. I can leave it outside on the stoop, and I can go into this space without resentment. So she didn't know it was possible to escape from being the prisoner of this grudge, this resentment. And then she discovered that she's not the prisoner anymore, that it's possible to put it down. And just by that simple realization, this is something that's such a subtle, like a shift, from not understanding something to the shift of understanding it. I mean, how many cells had to move in the brain for that way of thinking to change in such a dramatic and meaningful way. But she did, and it was earth-shaking. And from that, and it was definitely secondary to having been exposed to a little bit of the Dhamma and from making the effort with meditation, that some kind of subtle, intuitive learning was happening. She didn't even know that she was learning it, but then, like I said, the light arose, and she was able to see that there is an escape. I can't put it down. I can't escape. So if one is trying to practice and one focuses on sensual pleasure, then the mind will not feel secure, confident, settled, and decided. But if they are able to shift the focus to renunciation, then the mind becomes secure, confident, settled, and decided. And then they can come into this good state, which can be developed, and the mind can become freed with regard to that. Freed from all the distressing and feverish defilements that arise because of sensual pleasure. So they don't experience all that suffering anymore. And so that's how they escape from sensual pleasure. And likewise, ill will can be countered with metta, with loving kindness. In the case that the mind has the intention of harming, actually wanting to hurt somebody, and what a hell that could be if those thoughts were in the mind and you didn't know how to dispel them. But then they may focus on compassion, and the mind can become secure, come into that good state and be detached from that. So this is the way in which I think that the path of practice that the Blessed One, the Buddha, has laid out for us, it's such a wonderful way that this gradual path begins with practices that are really focusing on psychological well-being, giving the opportunity for people to follow a pattern that is capable of wiping out the gross negativities, the toxic patterns of thinking, and the suffering that comes about by clinging to misconceived, dangerous beliefs and ideologies that just lead to the arousing of more affliction. And then seeing that one has, that there's so many different occasions that young Buddhists may have, and not to mention mature Buddhists, where they can discover that there was some kind of a fixed pattern of thought that they've been carrying around for years or decades. It could be even like something like, my mother taught me something when I was a little girl, and it never occurred to me to question that. And I just have been carrying this around, and I'm sure Mother had a good intention to teach what she knew, but maybe she taught something that was good for me when I was a little girl, but now that I'm a mature adult, that thought is not good for me anymore, and that thought is actually becoming a hindrance. When the veil of ignorance drops because of meditation. And one sees, oh, it's just a concept. I don't need that. I don't need to hold that. It's not necessary to hold it. It can be released. And then step by step, we were able to realize this pattern of freedom. It's like our progress along the path is not defined by what we gain, but by what we've let go of. And so then this pattern then becomes well established, and we become confident in the pattern. And then when we come to the more profound or existential, the whole base of what people cling to as far as thinking that they have to have some kind of identity or some kind of clinging to life or clinging to some kind of stability in order to be safe, but then to be capable of not really needing to have any that kind of artificial stability, or not needing to cling to anything at all. And the sutta that I'm looking at right now, it goes from those practices to get out of your greed, hatred, to get out of your greed and ill will and cruelty, to being a case where a mendicant in meditation is focused on form. This would be like a jhana meditation, perhaps, focusing on a subtle form. But the mind isn't secure, and then they can focus on the formless, and the mind becomes secure. So even like the input of the senses, I think we said before, everybody, we need to have our senses in the ordinary way so we can step aside when a bus is coming down the street, or when we can pull back when we're in danger of stepping on a snake. But then in a different kind of way, we don't need them at all. So in meditation, it would be possible. We don't need this seeing, tasting, touching, hearing, and smelling. We don't need those sensations. So in this way, the escape is explained in terms of the immaterial meditations, progressively letting go of form, letting go of things, and so on. But then beyond that, even beyond, it should happen in meditation. We have got this wonderful healing opportunity to take a rest from the mind being continuously activated on this rat race of fabrications, and being able to take a rest from fabrications to just be in a more simple awareness. And that state is beneficial and healing, and above all, it's harmless, so we're not accumulating any bad karmas while we're in that state of simple awareness. But then it's even possible for some subtle kind of grasping or some subtle karmic grasping to the experience of meditation. Thinking, oh, how great I am for being such a good meditator. Or thinking, oh, now I must have some noble attainments because I'm having such a great time in meditation, or something like that. And then, but then the invitation is whatever is like accumulating in meditation, to definitely let go of that. Definitely be able to acknowledge and see how the experiences in meditation are created by causes. We trained in how to meditate. We came to the cushion. We decided to be still and to let go of our everyday way of thinking, to go into the special way of the special mental states of meditation. And we did that for the sake of calming and releasing and letting go of all kinds of grasping and craving, and for coming to a stillness wherein different kinds of insights could arise. And so all of those things those are part of the samsaric causes and conditions. These are wholesome causes that are unrelating, but they're still part of samsara, still part of causation. But then the great gain from meditation is to then become willing to let go even of that. And then that's where we have the opportunity to realize the escape on a more profound level. I want to begin to open up now and invite others who would like to ask a question or add their own experiences and insights about this theme. In particular, whether Ayya Marajina wants to add something to what I just added, or whether any of the other monastics in the space here have anything to add about what the escape is for you. Venerable Dhamma, do you have anything to say about the escape? You can if you like. Okay. Otherwise, any questions or comments about this? Okay, here is Shari.
There was something I didn't quite understand, which Ajahn Marajina was talking about. I kind of jotted it down, and I might even have it down wrong. But she was talking about the escape from gratification and danger. And she said something about how we need the aggregates, but we also need them to change. I don't understand what she meant by that, the aggregates to change. How do they change, and how is that beneficial?
Well, I'll give my answer. Marajina may add to it. There's a common set of a phrase that appears in many places in the suttas called the gratification, the danger, and the escape. So if even if something is aggravating to you and you hate it, there's a certain kind of a gratification in the hatred. It's like in some way people might think it's fun to hate. So that's the gratification, or your hatred is helping you to feel like you're alive or something like that. And then the danger is that hatred doesn't really help you for very long. It's got all its side effects, and it's not a permanent solution. It doesn't get rid of the thing that you disliked in the first place. So that's the danger. It doesn't work. And then the escape is letting go of clinging to anger. Likewise, for the things that you like, the pleasures in life, the gratification is that you like them. The danger is they're very impermanent, they don't last very long. And then the escape is letting go of the delighting and clinging and grasping after those pleasurable things. So then, in terms of the 5 aggregates, which are often described as a summary of things that of phenomena that people identify with as the definition of who I am. So this body, my feelings, my perceptions, my intentions, or my ability to know, all of these things, that altogether, that package becomes who I am, what people identify with. So when there's any clinging or identification or grasping at that, then it's a cause of suffering. When you become a fully enlightened arahant, and you, while you're still alive, that identification and grasping, that taking delight and clinging to form, feelings, perception, volition is completely gone. There's no any clinging whatsoever. And yet, the fully enlightened arahant shari will still have a body. She'll still experience pleasant or painful feelings based on different things happening in the body, and so on. It's just that it will be a completely different kind of experience, because there will be no identification and no clinging whatsoever.
So is that what she meant by the change in the aggregates? The fact that the arahant is not clinging.
Well, while you're still clinging to them, the danger is that they keep changing. And so it's hard to cling to something that keeps changing.
Okay. I mean, what you become attached to changes. So like you might let go of one object of your identification, and then another one comes up. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's tiresome, isn't it?
Yeah. Like the conveyor belt of attachments.
Right, exactly. Or like the monkey swinging in the trees, and they let go of one branch and grasp onto the next one. Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying.
The what has just lost their picture. There we are. Oh, Elaine.
This is kind of unrelated, but you mentioned formlessness, and I'm wondering if formless meditations are something that you shouldn't try to attempt early on, or where do they come in line with the jhanas, or I don't, it's kind of a new concept to me, I guess.
in the suttas, uh, there's uh, there's a very well-established descriptions of the four jhanas, and then beyond that, four immaterial attainments, and beyond that, the another state which is only to be experienced by fully enlightened or by enlightened meditators, which is the called Nirodha Samapatti, which is something where the whole the ordinary mental processes are able to close down temporarily in meditation. And I would say for a beginner to be striving for but you're not a beginner, you've been meditating for a while.
I'm still pretty much a beginner.
I would say to the best approach is to take that in entering into jhana, into full meditation, is based on a purification process that the mind is learning how to let go of the hindrances and the agitation arising from this constant restlessness and activity of the mind, all of the hindrances, the clinging, the craving, and then as one gets through the practice of mindfulness, to be able to see what's wholesome and what's unwholesome, and having the mind be less and less interested in what's unwholesome and more interested in what is peaceful and clear and calm, having the ground for seeing things clearly, having that calmness, and then from that the capacity then to enter into jhana arises from the practice of right effort and the practice of mindfulness, especially in terms of the letting go of those things that are unskillful. And then the whole trend of jhana is that the different states of especially bliss and joy associated with the experience of seclusion from the defilements and the hindrances, and from just the pleasure of the being in that unified special state of meditation, then the pleasure factor settles down and becomes more and more tranquilized until the mind comes to a state that's a great neutrality, and the which is again a basis for very clear insight, especially if this is all happening within the context of the Eightfold Noble Path, within the context of wisdom and virtue. And then the immaterial meditations would be something that is like arising from within samadhi. So we don't think of it as something separate. They're generally samadhi or meditation is described as being an essential part of the path. And so if you got tired of meditation and you don't meditate anymore, I recommend meditation.
Right.
And then it's not necessarily so. In the suttas, they say that at least jhana is necessary to gain awakening.
But at every stage of the path, there seems to be benefits. So if we just keep practicing, everything will happen at its own speed.
Yes,
Kind of,
it's a
yeah.
natural progressive process. And
Thank you, Ayya.
practicing. So if you don't have jhana, practice mindfulness.
Okay.
And if you don't have mindfulness, practice right effort. And if you
Okay.
don't feel able to do right effort, mindfulness, or jhana, then work on your morality. And if you're caught up in an immoral lifestyle, then you should investigate and try to develop a better right view and to understand karma. So that's the way, I'm going backwards, but this is the way that the path really is progressive. One thing leads to another. And these, but if you are able to look within, and it could be that, like, something has really opened up for you that's very special, but you didn't notice it because you forgot to be aware of your own state of mind. So if you can be aware, then you'll notice and feel more and more like encouraged to practice with enthusiasm and sincerity.
Thank you, Ayya.
I'm going to
May I direct
yes,
an I had wanted to go back to what Shari had asked.
yes, please.
Is that possible? Okay.
You can just turn your mute anytime you want to speak. Just turn your mute off and speak, and we'll be so happy to hear from you because it's a rare treat.
Thank you,
And then we'll come up to Ren after that.
Thank you, Ayya. What I had said about the clinging to perception was that sometimes we get into these or not sometimes, we are in habit patterns constantly, and we rely on what we already have processed at some point, so that we're not present. We don't have sati on a daily basis, and so we rely on the clinging aggregates, and we're not meeting our presence and our situation, our conditions afresh. So we get into these habit patterns that are based on clinging to old perceptions and old feeling and old sankharas, which are intention, which is kama.
Right.
And if we can come to this presence every moment anew, and not like, every second, but just throughout the day, come back to a reality base, to a fresh experience. Again, we can escape old patterns by just opening up to the new experience, which is very different from how we have habitually, how it has habitually settled into our mind. And the image that comes up at this moment is, like, some of us remember those old 45s or the old 33 LP albums, and they would get like a scratch on them, and then the needle would just hop back into the same groove and play the same very short notes over and over again. And that's like clinging perception. And if you just flick the needle very, very gently so you don't create another scratch, then it moves back, and it moves into the present, and it's not into that old groove. And that's part of letting go, is understanding that we've outgrown some perceptions, we've outgrown some sankharas, and we're still dragging them along. I hope that's a little bit better explanation for Shari.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Ren.
Thank you, Ayya. I have two questions, if that's possible. I really appreciate the talk tonight, but I usually always appreciate the talk anyway. But to this topic, it feels that wholesome behavior is a product of having clarity. It's not rather than a goal. The goal is not to have wholesome behavior. It's just naturally whatever behavior will be wholesome if we have clarity. So my question about that was actually in Buddhist cosmology, is it true that, am I understanding correctly that there are different Buddhas create different world, right? Which has its own vision and whatnot. If we follow that cosmology, I wonder, it feels like this world, the goal for this world, the tranquility and, letting go of self and nirvana is quite clear. That's the goal of purification for this world. I wonder if the goal is the same for other world as well. So that was my first question.
As my understanding of Buddhist cosmology is that in the heavenly realms and the hell realms, that there is the same options expressed in terms of, like in heaven, there's one sutta where all the material world had disappeared completely. There was only the heavenly realm, and the beings lived on light. And then one of the devas in that realm had a thought, and they said, I wonder if this light would be tasty. And they took a little taste of light, and then the light became, like honey. And then they dropped from the level they were down to a more vulgar level because it was more materialistic. And then it drops and drops and drops until they drop into the material world. So it's basically the same process. The truths that the Buddha taught are truths everywhere, in every realm of existence.
Right. It's just that some realms are at different stages, and we're pretty primitive in this particular realm. So my other question was pertaining to your clarification last time, actually, about why the Buddha advocated not killing. My question was why advocated the clinging of attachment to individual lives. And the way you explained was very clear. You said it's because unenlightened beings, which is most of us, will have a lot of anxiety or fear or hatred towards the doer before their death. So that's a reason. And then after that, I was thinking of Jainism, because I was thinking, wow, but even if we accidentally kill a creature because we weren't aware, or a blind person, but the creature would still feel the anger or anxiety or hatred to the person who's unintentionally doing the killing. So it feels like maybe the Buddha is trying to, like, I don't know, for the mass, to kind of give us a little slack, cut us a little slack. Well, okay, if it's unintentional, it's not as bad, or I don't know, because with Jainism, they're even very, very they're trying not to do any at all, which makes life very difficult, I would imagine, because you have to pay attention to so many things.
Well, if I intentionally caused somebody to fall into a state where they could spend an eon in hell, then that's a pretty awful karma for me, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the karma that is going to touch onto this continuum, is the karma that I've done. So, they're all in this world of samsara. There are many beings which have their own karmic continuum. And they cross and interact. So doing what is harmful to oneself, or what is harmful to another, or what is harmful to both, is definitely unwholesome karma, which produces a painful result for the doer of that karma. And doing wholesome beneficial karmas, which are beneficial to oneself, beneficial to another, beneficial to both, that results in creating a karmic effect for the doer, which has a pleasant result. And then for those who are dedicated to this path of training, we're interested in doing the kind of karmas that lead to the end of karma. So we're doing the kind of practices that are leading to enlightenment, where one is no longer creating any kind of karma whatsoever for more and more existence, whether it be a painful existence or a pleasant existence. The hell realm and the heavenly realm, in a way, are kind of like a tremendous metaphor for the gratification and the danger that you could experience at a very, simple level. If you, if they offer some ice cream, and then tomorrow they didn't offer the ice cream, that's the gratification and the danger, right? So, and it's the same, it's the same pattern in the cosmic level, as far as the beings who's accumulated wholesome karmas and get reborn in pleasant realms, or come to have a pleasant existence, or those who've done the horrible karmas and are having a horrible existence.
Right. So what I wasn't clear about, what I didn't understand was, even if we accidentally, not intentionally kill another being, or step on an animal and kill the animal, wouldn't that animal still possibly have hatred, and therefore karma was induced anyway, even if we didn't intend it?
So the karma that we experience is a result of our intentions. So it's, if I intentionally am causing another being to suffer and to actually come to harm, because I induced a hatred or the delusion or the defilement in another being, and because of my unskillful behavior, that being is coming to a painful result. It's because of so I suffer, they have their own suffering, and then I have my suffering. So my suffering is the result of my intentional behavior, as is my happiness also, to some extent, is arising because of my intentional behavior. And also, a lot of my suffering and happiness is the result of what has already been inherited. At the time that I took a human birth and I got this kind of genetic code and this kind of body, and came into being in this kind of culture, then there's a whole freight train of different pleasant and unpleasant experiences that were part of the ticket that I got when I took this kind of human birth into this particular setting that I came into. But we aim to doing wholesome karmas does seem to set the stage for being able to do the kind of practices that are leading to the end of karma. So that's why the Buddha recommends doing wholesome deeds and wholesome pattern of thought as setting the stage for a life which is less stressful and more happy. And that life, that's really part of the space where insight and awakening can happen.
So what I am concluding from tonight and also from last time was that karma is accumulated from both sides. One is from the doer, and the other side is from the receiver, the kind of confusion and fear and hatred towards the doer. So it's like a both sides sort of thing that we try to minimize. Is that true? Correct?
Well, I'm going to try to reverse the picture and put it on my own, in my own experience. If you supposed, let's say, somebody insulted and disrespected me, or they were mean to me, or they were like not fair. This is my biggest trigger, is when somebody does something that's not fair. And then I fall into a dispute, and then I fall into a grudge, and then fall into hatred because I can't stand it. It's so unfair. I just can't stand it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. So all of those reactions are, this is actually my choice. So I'm not the owner of what was said or done that triggered me, but I'm the owner of my own reactions and my own responses. And just the same way that worm that hated me when I stepped on it by mistake, actually that worm is the owner of their reaction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the owner of my reaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Ayya. Thank you.
I'll call on Richard.
Well, thank you. First, just to address some things that Ren was inquiring about in Jainism. There's a sutta where Buddha has a discussion with a Jain, and they talk about kama, action. And the Jain says that according to his teacher, physical action is the most powerful, verbal is next, and mental is the least. And Buddha takes the complete opposite stance and says, no, the mind is the most powerful, verbal is next, less powerful, and physical is the very least powerful. And the reason for this is that it correctly reflects the nature of the, of the universe, you might say, of Dhamma. Because the only way that you can free yourself, attain cessation, and attain nibbana is through your cetana, your volition. So the mind is the most powerful. If the physical body was the most powerful, then you'd just be bound forever because the body's always doing things. Like Ren mentioned that, the Jains are very careful about killing even small creatures. But unfortunately, the Jains were not aware of microscopic creatures. Here, I just killed a whole bunch of them. When you breathe, you're sucking in microscopic creatures and killing them. Every time you take a breath, there goes a whole bunch more. You eat some food, maybe too much salt or something, kills bacteria and stuff in your stomach, the bacteria that live inside your body. So you're constantly killing something all the time, just being alive, you're killing your own cells in your body, which have their own separate individual existence. Okay, but we can understand this by looking at blood cells. Blood cells aren't attached to anything. They're not attached to any nerves or anything like that. And they're floating freely through the bloodstream and picking up nutrients and whatever, and giving them off to other cells and taking away their waste products and disposing of them. But there's no, everything else, when we look at a body, we seem to think of it as like a solid structure, but actually blood cells are completely independent little creatures, all living in there, just as every single cell in your body is, every organ is, etc. You're just sort of the master of the form as a whole, you might say, a parent master. So so there's a big difference there between Jainism and what the Buddha was teaching. And if the body was more powerful, you'd just be stuck here forever. You'd just be accumulating karmic reactions over and over and over again, and there'd be no way to escape. But that's why Buddha found cessation through volition, attaining the fifth formless state. So getting back to this idea of craving and cessation. So in Paticca Samuppada, you have the six senses, and the six senses have contact, and that contact produces a sensation, and that sensation in an unenlightened person produces a craving. So when you transition through meditation to the formless realm, you leave behind form. So it says in the sutras that only the remaining four khandhas remain. Form is dropped away. But you also drop away the sense of taste, the sense of smell, and the sense of touch. But you still have in the formless realm, you still have a type of hearing. It's not like a physical hearing, but there's still a communication there. And there's still sight, and there's still mana. Okay, the false identification with something, as you, which is not you. So you have those three senses. But when you enter into the fifth formless state, it's called the state of cessation because it's cessation of sense perception. So what happens is that sight and hearing and mana drop away. And in that, if you catch on enough and see that there's only Chaitana and Sankara, left, that by volition, Sankaras can still arise, subtle Sankaras can still arise. And then you see that you are creating those Sankaras. That's what causes complete liberation and knowledge that the mind has been liberated, Chaitanya Vimukti, and that you've attained Pana Vimukti, final complete liberation. But if you don't have enough of that insight, Buddha says, due to some continued interest in Dhamma meaning objective reality, you still want some kind of subtle experience, even if it's in the formless realms. Then you drop back out, mana is reestablished, and you have those two remaining senses until you come back to the physical body, in which the other three senses, due to being in a physical form, are reactivated. So this cessation is literally, Buddha calls the six senses the all, right? Because that's how you're experiencing this objective reality. So you're literally shutting down that whole process of six senses, even if it's just temporarily, and that's what gives you the insight that allows you to see that it's your own mind, your own Chaitana, having volition, your own mind having volition, that's keeping you bound into this samsara experience.
Richard, I'm
Anyway,
aware
that's
that
all I want to say very much.
what Buddhanasorn has a need to close up at 9 o'clock, and I'm sorry that I've let it run over the time. But I thank you for that really wonderful clarification about how the formless meditations and the other immaterial meditations fit into the realization about how we perpetuate ourselves in samsara.